What can be done at country level to be more prepared for a cash response?
Well, first, preposition relationships as much as you can. If you think it is going to be feasible to respond through cash, do your mapping of financial service providers, do your mapping of the regulatory environment. In fact, do that first. And establish, if you can, establish kind of retainer contracts or framework agreements with providers, because that is really going to speed you up. The other thing to do is also, as part of the mapping, is engaging the host country governments and the relevant agencies to see what registries already exist and to what extent you can kind of rely on them, and how quickly they can expand to respond. But also what capacity is there with the host country government? Can you offer some capacity building opportunities? Because the thirst for knowledge is there, but it's often the time pressures on the side of humanitarians not having the time to engage and not identifying those areas where capacity and capacity building could be helpful.
One, the country has to do advocacy on the government institutions to accept the cash and voucher response as a modality that will go hand in hand with the in-kind. Two, the country could also develop in developing the guiding training document for cash and voucher assistance partners that are implementing the related projects. Three, we should also channel the resources into the cash and voucher assistance modality than realizing on any cash. And then also the country has to do financial service mapping that could help in determining or in deciding which transfer mechanism can be employed, can be put in place when we are responding with the cash and voucher assistance. Lastly, but not the least, the country would also develop coordination and cooperation tool that will support the partners whenever they are reporting.
In the case that the current emergency response projects required a large-scale distribution, timeliness, and transparency, the top three things that a country program can do to be more prepared for a cash response are: firstly, using online cash transfer software. This helps keep track cash delivery, manage beneficiary information, and monitor the process on a real-time basis, which facilitates quick decision-making and efficient management. Secondly, having a relationship and a pre-positioned contract framework with financial service providers for cash distribution. Lastly, having in place standard operating procedures that outline main responsibilities and basic guidance of the step-by-step processes throughout the project cycle. This gives greater clarity and confidence to the team implementing the cash programming and ensure improvement in critical management responsibilities.
If I'm taking like a flashback of what's happening before the war, we go for development. I wouldn't say development, but it is a kind of resilience and stability programming. And the cash was not in our mind. If we know that things is coming, we would invest more. I mean, capacity and monetary wise for give the talent to our staff about the cash transfer programs, because cash transfer programs proves that it is the quickest way to help vulnerable people. If we go and we distribute food baskets, this will take time, efforts, personnel. But cash transfers, it is of course it is not like theory of them, but still it is way easier than other programming.
The top 3 things country programs can do to prepare for a cash response are: 1, have agreements with financial service providers or vendors in advance of an emergency. 2, have standard operating procedures agreed on with micro enterprises that enable small traders to participate in the market-based response that we are espousing during emergencies. And 3, provide training to partners on cash and voucher assistance and market-based programming prior to an emergency.
Los procesos de preparación en el caso de transferencias de cash, en el caso de vouchers, en contextos como el peruano, donde, por ejemplo, no es que encontremos gran cantidad de proveedores financieros que puedan trabajar con migrantes y refugiados. Si hay 2, ya es mucho. Y si hay 1, es el que mejor funciona. Si uno de ellos 2 no funciona, nos complicamos bastante. Lo mismo pasa con supermercados. No hay más de 3 grandes cadenas. Simplemente no es que no querramos, no existen. Sí hemos trabajado con supermercados más pequeños, pero más allá de eso no existen. Y eso va muy de la mano con esta idea de que la transferencia de cash debería apoyar el mercado local, pero ¿cómo hacemos si una cuestión administrativa como, por ejemplo, que cuenten con el tipo adecuado de recibo, de factura, de boleta, del proceso administrativo es complejo en un mercado local? Entonces, ahí hay un asunto. Entonces, si hablamos de 3 puntos que hacer, yo creo que lo más importante es que las áreas de operaciones, el soporte logístico cuente con el entendimiento de cómo la temática de transferencias de efectivo y de vales, de vouchers, trabaja, cómo funciona y cuáles son sus implicancias. Eso me parece básico, porque eso aligera tiempo también. Número 2, tener los acuerdos con proveedores financieros, tener los acuerdos con proveedores de vouchers, de vales ya hechos. Eso me parece muy importante como parte de los procesos de preparación que por lo menos las ONGs internacionales todos realizamos. Y un punto tercero es el dimensionar el equipo, el dimensionar que quienes implementan esto sean personas. De repente, al ser un tema nuevo, no es que busquemos con experiencia específica, hay mucho en Cash and Voucher, pero sí con una sensibilidad para dimensionar que esto no es un regalo. Eso es un punto muy importante. Que los programas del país bajen la idea de su personal. Yo no estoy regalando dinero, que eso es algo que se ha escuchado lamentablemente mucho. Estoy dando un soporte en un contexto humanitario. Entonces, eso me parece muy importante, sensibilizar a los equipos que trabajan esto cara a cara, o en este caso, obviamente, en la virtualidad, teléfono a teléfono con los posibles beneficiarios y beneficiarias.
I think, first of all, it's very important to have completed procurement in places where there is a risk of an emergency, such as an influx of refugees, etc. We have seen certainly what speeds up UNHCR's emergency response is that we actually have done contracting in most places where we are working. So it's really easy to just use that contract and provide cash assistance in an emergency. So that's the first thing. Then the second point, of course, is to have senior management and other staff on board. They have to be supportive, aware of cash, and ideally they also have to have some kind of training so they know what they're doing. Yes, we can of course deploy cash supporting staff, etc. But if you don't have senior management on board, you are unlikely to succeed with your cash assistance. At least that's my experience. So training, continued training on cash, including for senior management, is a key requirement as well. And then, of course, what is a requirement to me is that the operations really need to have a clear response plan with clear objectives. And so we don't start with the cash assistance. Let's just give cash to the people. We need to understand what we give cash for. And if the objectives are not clear and if the plan is not clear, we will not be able to sort of achieve the objectives. So I think the contingency plan, having a solid contingency plan in place with clear objectives is, of course, key to the cash response in an emergency.
Top 3 things country programs can do to be more prepared for cash responses. First of all, we would like to advise that the country program should have a technical expertise in place who have experience in both implementation and capacity building, as well as having a market assessment and monitoring tools to closely understand the market functionality in the areas of operation. The third thing that we would like to advise is to have a contract with financial service provider who have financial capacity and good geographic coverage and access, along with strong internal procedures and financial system in place to support the implementation of the CVA programming.
As we transition into a more recovery phase, minimal opportunity is this to link humanitarian action to national social protection system. Emphasis again on coordination is so key. Secondly, around helping national systems to better prepare for future shocks. And this is where early warning and early action plans are extremely important. Humanitarian actors also bring very important know-how, best practices, as well as technology in the various phases of implementation of social protection around identification, registration, enrollment, and payment mechanism. These are contribution to national system that helps to not only build the capacity, but also to strengthen partnership between government and humanitarian actors. As I mentioned before, having a collective impact evaluation, not individual, but joint, allows to build evidence for national system to be able to allocate resources towards social protection systems.
So I would give 3 tips for getting better prepared for the cash transfer intervention in the country. The first one is understanding the context, which means understanding if the context where you are working in is appropriate, analyzing the functionality of the markets and the prices. Your understanding your operating environment, the genuine analysis of your financial service provider that are existing, the coverage, and tentatively the associated risks with this analysis. Understanding the regulatory framework and in the working in the country where you are working on, the national financial rules, what is allowed, what is not allowed, if there are, let's say, compulsory rules, and understanding, and this is a more programmatic issue, is understanding the let's say the response analysis, the type of shocks that this country is going through, and the type of modality that you could apply. That's let's say the first big tip. The second one is, and it's not sequential but in parallel, is reinforcing the capacity, which means training not only the staff of the organization you are working in, but also with partners, the national partners you have strategically working with, which going a step further would definitely let's say appoint somebody in your staff who will become the cash focal point, the cash solely the cash expert. And then the third part is definitely looking forward and saying for assessing your cash-based interventions, how this cash-based intervention can be linked with the existing social protection or initiative nascent social protection system in the countries. And that would go to identify, let's say, relevant government focal points and see how these linkages can be strengthened throughout.